Hey friends, how are you? Happy Wednesday, happy hump day, happy whatever day you're catching me. Happy #Witchy Wednesday and happy #Witching Hour, the Witching Hour. How are you? Let me know in that conversation box down below. Let me know who you are, where you're catching me from, where you're at right now, what's the weather like. So I'm Angela, if you don't know me. I am a coach here in Cleveland, Ohio. I am a witch here in Cleveland, Ohio, and I love coming to you every Wednesday talking about witchy topics. I talk about witchy topics a lot, but I especially like coming to you on Wednesdays and doing it. And tonight we're talking all about divination. Divination. It's technically the term for a group of things, which we'll break down what divination here is in a second, but a group of things that include things like oracle cards and tarot cards and pendulums and reading tea leaves and all sorts of things that we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to get deep down into some of that stuff tonight. Lots of that stuff tonight. I have a whole bunch of witchy show and tell here sitting next to me, so I'll get to show you some tools. We're going to talk about lots of things. And summer solstice is only a couple of days away. Oh, thanks, Kathy. Summer solstice is only a couple of days away. So I also have an exciting announcement here this evening at the end of this live. So, hey everybody, how are you? Hey. So if you're jumping on live, say hello to me in that conversation box so I can say hey to you. Hey Kathy, hey Shannon, hey Julie, how are you all this evening? See who else we have here with me. Kelly, did I say hi to you? Hey Kelly. So, like I said, say hello. So when I go live talking about witchy topics, it takes a little bit of guts. Takes a little bit of guts. So what I ask of you, if you are here catching this, either live or on the replay, is that the very least you do is say hello to me. Just say hi. Just say hi. Because I'm holding space. And to hold space to talk about things like witchiness in a public forum is something that takes some bravery. It does, right? And so if I'm going to do that, the least I say is if you're watching, just engage and let me know that you're here and say hello. Hey Tiara, what's up? How are you, Dal? So, hey, Cheryl, how are you? So like I said, divination tonight. I'm excited. How many of you have ever owned an oracle card or a tarot card deck? How many of you have maybe been on a live where someone's read oracle cards or tarot cards, right? I love doing that. I see a lot of my friends on here. I know that either you've been on the live when I've read cards before or I've read cards for you before, right? I love doing those things. But tonight we're going to talk not just about tarot cards and oracle cards, we're going to talk about other forms of divination also. Before we can talk about other forms of divination, we have to talk about what the heck this word means. I almost didn't say heck. What the heck this word means. What is divination, right? Julie's saying she has a deck. Yeah, right? Like when I put my decks out the other night in front of the full moon to charge them, I had 16 decks. I'm like, how did I end up with 16 decks, right? Like I just keep picking up decks, and before you know it, like you have so many decks. Anybody else have like a little bit of a deck issue? Like, whoo, I'm picking up like lots of decks lately. All right, so yes, you choose and read. Yes, all right. So divination, what is divination? So some of you may have heard things or know about divination by hearing about things like fortune telling. How many of us know about fortune telling, right? How many of you have been to like a county fair or some sort of festival and there's been a fortune teller, right? Yep, me too. And some of those fortune tellers are legitimate, right? And practicing divination. And some of them are a little more like smoke and mirrors, like a little more costumey, like a little more play, right? And so it's sometimes hard to know like what it is. It's sometimes hard to differentiate. Like if you're at someplace like a festival or especially a fair or carnival, like what is it? Like is it real or is it pretend, like just for show, right? And so part of that is your intuition. Part of it is learning where you tend to find like people who are doing divination, which we're going to talk about here in a second, and where you're finding people who are doing things that just feel good, just for show, kind of like the movies or any other kind of like entertainment, right? Some of it's for entertainment's sake and some of it's a little deeper than that, a little more like spiritual, right? And so there's different forms. What we're talking about tonight is more of like the spiritual part, right? The stuff that's digging in, looking for signs, talking to spirit guides, talking to source, looking for omens, those kind of things. We're talking about using intuition. We're going to be talking about how to tap into your own intuition. We're going to talk about things, terms like seers or seekers, the people who use divination. We're going to talk about different tools that you can use to do those things, right? That's all part of divination. So divination, what is this D word that I keep throwing around? Divination, right? To divine is at the beginning of that, divination. It is this word, some people use it, right? Like I said, to talk about predicting the future. I tend to, and a lot of witches, right, don't really necessarily think about predicting the future, right? But it's more like looking at the signs, right? You're kind of like, some people are channeling, and it depends on what you're using and what your own clairsenses are. That's another one of those words I like using a lot, clairsenses, but what your gifts are, what your intuitive gifts are, right? But it's interpreting the signs and the messages that are coming through and kind of evaluating what the situation is right now based on all the facts right now. So based on everything that's on the table right now, what do things kind of look like, right? Based on right now. So it's not necessarily fortune telling, because it's not necessarily looking into the future and knowing exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. It's based on everything that's on the table now, when we're looking at the signs and the omens and what the guides are saying and what's coming through and what's being channeled. And again, some of it's looking at signs and omens, some of it's channeling, and we're going to distinguish how different forms of divination are using different things tonight. But let me know if that makes sense. In general, this large category is called divination. And then we're going to break down different tools, different things that we do in different forms of divination, where some of it's channeling, some of it is looking for signs and omens, etc. So how many of you would like some witchy show and tell and to start breaking these things apart? Like oracle cards. How many of you would like some tips on how to do some of these things so that you can maybe try them out and see if it feels good? See if you can start to build some talent in this, or if you have some intuitive or some natural talent in some of these things, right? Because none of these things that I'm going to show you tonight, none of these things that I'm going to explain or teach you tonight, none of them is dangerous, okay? None of these things you can hurt someone with. No, none of these things you can hurt yourself with. They're all baby witch safe, right? They're all baby safe, witch safe. So you can do any of these things I'm about to teach you. Now, I say that with a caveat that it's like anything new that you try, right? And by the way, thank you for telling all of our friends that we're here chatting. I really appreciate you. I say that with a caveat that it's like anything new that you try. Hey, Leah, how are you? Hey, Claire, how are you? Anything new that you try, it takes some practice, right? So the first time that you pick up an oracle card deck, or the first time that you pick up a pendulum, right? It might take a little practice before you start to get something out that seems like it's on point. Now, part of that is because you're developing a relationship with the tool. Part of it's because you're developing a relationship with the guides, with source, etc. And there's also an important message here, and this is a really important message for this entire divination topic I'm going to talk about tonight, which is the fact that there's really not a wrong or right way to do divination. There's not really a wrong or right way to read tarot or oracle cards. There's not really a wrong or right way to use a pendulum. It's exactly clear. Practice makes better. So as you start to do it, your guides, whether or not you believe in the angels, whether or not you believe in God, whether or not you believe in source, whether or not you believe in the master guides, whether like whoever, the ascended masters, whoever it is that you believe that you're communicating with to channel messages or whatever it is that you believe that is helping you grow your gift to find signs and omens, you're developing that relationship, just like I develop a relationship with you, and just like you develop a relationship with other people. The stronger that you develop that relationship, and the stronger that you develop the energy and practice with a tool, the stronger and better that you will get with it. So when it's brand new, when you're just starting out, it's going to be a little more difficult, and your signs and symbols might be a little more fuzzy. But the more that you use it, and the more that you practice, and the more that you develop what is a system that feels good to you. So whether it's to shuffle like they shuffle in a casino, or whether it's to shuffle like this, right? Well, like however you want to shuffle. Let me grab a deck and show you what I mean. However you want to shuffle your cards, right? Whatever works for you is the right way. So whether or not you want to shuffle like this, right? So however you want to shuffle, whether or not you want to just split a deck and that's the card you're going to grab, whether or not you're reading in person and you want to spread it out and let the person grab it. The key, hey Virginia, the key is that you develop a system, regardless of what divination tool or technique it is, you develop a system that works for you, that feels intuitively good to you, and then the guides, source, etc. is going to know that that's how you do it, and you will develop a rhythm, and that is how your messages, your signs, your symbols, your omens will start to get channeled through. So it's whatever works for you. How I read is going to be different than how you read. It's going to be different than how Cheryl reads. It's going to be different than how Wendy Sue reads. It's going to be different than how Jennifer or Claire reads. All right, so let's break some of these apart. Let's do some witchy show and tell. So let's talk about oracle cards and tarot cards first, because that's something that so many people are familiar with, right? So oracle cards, there are tons of oracle card decks. There are tons of tarot decks, right? Tarot decks, the main difference here between tarot and oracle card decks is that a tarot deck typically, and not always, but typically has certain suits. And certain suits in general, and certain like cards in general have a general meaning to them. So if you can learn the meaning or memorize the meaning of certain suits, certain types of cards in tarot decks, then you can pick up any deck, any tarot deck, etc., and you can generally use it to do a reading and know. As opposed to an oracle card deck, which each oracle card deck typically, often, comes with a little book to help you read, right? It comes with a little book to help you interpret cards. Now, here is what I want to say about both oracle and tarot card readings. You don't technically need to know the meaning of the tarot cards, and you don't technically need that little nifty book that comes with all these cards. Here are some things that I want to teach you on this live, and then we'll move on to other show and tell and other forms of divination, to reading cards. Are you ready for the tips? Let me know. Drop tips in that conversation box down below if you want tips on how to do this without any of the directions and how to use your intuition to do it. Because intuition is what the witches use. Intuition is the witchy stuff, right? So when you're doing a reading, the first thing you want to do is you want to focus and put your energy, your intention into the deck. That's important, right? You want to know what it is that you're asking, what it is that you're seeking. So you put your intention into the deck, right? And when you shuffle the deck, right, which I shuffled this a couple of minutes ago, but you shuffle the deck and you're continuing to put your intuition into the deck. And then when you split it, right, or when you pull your card and you're looking at your card, some cards have a saying on them. So this has a saying, and you can look at the saying and you can ask yourself what the saying means to you, right? This says the initiation, rite of passage, crossing the threshold. And I can ask myself, what question did I ask, right? Like, what does this saying mean to me or mean to the person that I'm reading for in this moment, or how does it apply to the situation? But it goes beyond that. Then start looking at the picture or symbols that show up. If there are animals that show up on your card, this card doesn't happen to have animals on it, but a lot of cards, a lot of oracle cards, a lot of tarot cards have animals. Animals tend to have symbology connected to them, and that is why we see it show up so often. So ask yourself, in general, what sort of symbology do those animals have attached to them? And then also, what symbology does that animal have attached to yourself and to the person that you're reading for if you're reading for someone else? That is important. Ask yourself what colors show up. Is it a bright card? Is it a dark card? This card is dark, but there's a tunnel and there's light at the end of that tunnel. There's a little bit of a storm out in the back, right? Like, there's lots of symbology here. Ask yourself what the symbology is. Ask yourself what the symbology is meaning, right? This card is talking about initiation, but if I go through the initiation, if I get through whatever is coming, whatever I'm going through right now, there is a wonderful surprise on the other side, right? So this card is telling me, like, keep going. Like, it might be hard right now. You are going through the initiation phase, but it is so worth it. Like, look at what is on the other side, right? Do you see how I did that? I didn't have to read a book, right? Interpret what this card means, right? Some people would say, you're reading into it. Yeah, I am reading into it, right? That's what divination is about. Divination is looking for signs, looking for symbols, looking for what your intuition tells you is there, and helping the person that you're reading for look for those things also. And it's about trusting your gut. Being a witch is about trusting your gut. It is about taking that intuition that society in general has sort of told us to like push in the back and ignore. And it is about building it up stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until we like block out all the noise and we're following our intuition, we're following our gut, and we trust that because we understand that it is as strong, if not stronger, than the things that we smell, the things that we taste, the things that we hear, the things that we see, and the things that we can feel, right? So trust your gut. Exactly, Julie. Exactly, Kathy. All right, so those were some tips for reading cards. Let's move on to another form of divination. Another form of divination that you all might be familiar with is pendulum reading. How many of you either have a pendulum or know someone who has a pendulum? Drop pendulum in the comments down below. So this is my little bag I keep my pendulum in. I do not usually throw this symbol up on my lives, but I want to talk about it for a second because this is the witching hour. So this is a pentagram. It is a star. It is a symbol that is really misunderstood in our society. A lot of people associate it with really evil things. But did you know that it represents 5 things? There's 5 points on the star. It represents 5 things, 5 elements. It represents spirit, fire, air, water, and earth. That doesn't sound so evil to me. What about you, right? Super, super important symbol for witches, right? And really a very sacred symbol. So I have my pendulum in there, right? So a lot of times pendulums are made out of crystals, but pendulums can really be made out of anything. It is a heavier source on a string or a chain or some sort of straight source, right? So that it hangs. And the way that a pendulum is actually used is that you hold it so that it's hanging, and you can either hold it over your hand, like I'm doing here. You can swipe the comments if you need to, so you can see I can hold it up a little bit. You can either hold it over your hand and ask a question of it, right? Or you can hold it over a spirit board, which I've talked about on another live. You can hold it over a paper that you've simply written like yes, no over, right? And you ask it a question. Now, you want to make sure, I mean, just some basic sort of physics, right? Like if there's a strong wind coming through, obviously that's influencing your pendulum, right? But so if it's mostly still, and then you're asking yourself or source a question, and then you get to know your pendulum. So different people react differently with their pendulums. Some people, you get to know your pendulum. Your energy between yourself and usually the crystal that's at the bottom of your pendulum, like you build a relationship there, an energetic sort of relationship. So you get to know, the more that you use it, what a yes feels like, looks like to you, and what a no looks like or feels like to you. A lot of people, a no or a yes goes in a circle and the other one goes back and forth, or one may be absolutely still and the other one may move for them, right? So it depends on you, just like reading cards depends for you, right? A pendulum depends on you and your divination style, but you learn what it's like for you, and then it becomes very clear as you're asking questions. So when I bought this, I bought it at a witchy metaphysical store in Pittsburgh, when we went to Pittsburgh over the winter. And when I bought it, I walked into the store and I almost walked out of the store, honestly, because there wasn't a lot in the store that I was super interested in, but I saw the pendulums and I knew I wanted a new pendulum. When I walked back there, I spotted this one, and it's the one that stood out to me, and it was just kind of like an energetic call, which is how I generally choose crystals in general. And so I picked it up and I held it over my hand. And I asked myself in my head, right, like with intuition, asked myself in the crystal like a couple of questions, and it was very active and gave me like very strong like yes or no answers. And the person working in the store said like, wow, that's a really active pendulum, right? And I was like, yep, it's going home with me. So a couple of tips also on how you can choose your pendulums. So pendulums. Pendulums are something that have been used for a long time. If you don't have a crystal, you can do something as simple as using a string with a paper clip at the end. It doesn't have to be a crystal. The cool part about using a pendulum that has a crystal at the end is that you can choose your pendulum based on either a crystal that you're that very close to a crystal that you work with a lot. So for instance, rose quartz I work with a lot, amethyst I work with a lot, moss agate I work with a lot, right? You can choose it based on that, or you can choose it based on what you're working with at that time. So if you're doing a lot of work on a specific topic, you can choose a pendulum that relates to that. So say you're doing a lot of spiritual work, maybe you want an amethyst pendulum, etc., right? Hey Debbie, hey Shannon, how are you? So hey Jacqueline, how are you? So pendulums. Pendulums have also been used for a really long time. It's another way of asking questions and divining answers, right? Finding answers from source, etc. So pendulums. What about runes? How many of you have ever heard of runes before? Runes they're symbols. It's actually 16 symbols. They come from Norse culture, so a long time ago. And they were originally developed as an alphabet, and they're used now similarly to a way that tarot cards are used, right? So each symbol now, and I'll show you, each symbol has a sort of, Debbie says she loves her runes. I love mine too, Debbie. Each symbol has a sort of meaning, a metaphysical meaning, a meaning in general to it, sort of like different tarot cards has. So there's a rune for you. Okay, let me show you another one so you can see that they look different, right? Kind of like an alphabet, like I said. So runes have different meanings. Now, some witches make their own runes. So you can make your own symbols, develop a relationship with that, you know what they mean. And then when you use them, you either toss them or you draw them out of a bag, right? You know what it means. And so when you're asking for answers, right, and you're using your runes, you know what those symbols mean. So it's the same as developing your own language, your own tool for divination, right? But I like using Norse runes or witch runes, right, which is an entirely different symbol system, right? Yes, Debbie, this system is wood. These runes are wood. But I want to show you something that's special. Do you want to see something that's special? I have a rune set that my mom made for me over a decade ago. So she made me this bag. This is the rune set that I use the most often. She made me the bag, she hand embroidered it, and she blessed it. She made me a sheet to do my readings on, which is beat up because I use it a lot. And then she made me a rune set out of stones that she found. So she found stones, tumbled them multiple times, and then put the runes on them. Yes, Virginia, very special. And then blessed these. And so these are the runes that I have the strongest relationship with. These are the runes that I use the most often. But so I love using runes. You use it very similarly to the same way that you would do a tarot card or an oracle card reading. So I can do rune readings for other people, right? Like I understand the symbology, I understand the meaning between each symbol. And so say I was gonna do a reading for Shannon, for instance, right? I would grab my bag and I could either dump them out if I wanted to and see where they landed and read based on proximity to me and proximity to each other, or I could take my bag and say, same way that we would do like an oracle card reading where you draw 3 out, I could take my bag and draw 3 runes out, and based on the 3 runes I drew, right, there would be a significance to the symbols that I drew, etc., right? So there's a special announcement at the end of this live coming up about runes, so stick close for that. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about another divination tool. How many of you have ever heard about tea leaf reading? Tea leaf, like the tea that we drink. Like the tea that we drink. Tea leaf reading is something that started in the 17th century. Have you ever heard of it? So it's literally drinking tea, and then the scryer or the seer or the seeker or the diviner reads the tea leaves that are in the bottom of the cup. So this has skeleton keys and I need to pull it out. So if you were to drink the tea, say I was going to do this for Leah, right? I would have Leah drink the tea, still have leaves in it, right? So we don't actually strain it out. she would drink the tea, and then when she was all done, I would look at where the leaves and the residue is in here, and I would look for symbols, I would look for the colors. Some people sometimes see words, focus. Some people sometimes see words, etc. in there, right? Some people see animals, etc. So you then literally read the tea leaves. The idea is that the person who's drinking it, right, is infusing their energy into it by drinking the tea, and then I'm looking for the symbology in it as someone who is intuitive. So it's also a cool form of divination. So we've done tarot cards, we've done runes, we've done a pendulum, we have done tea leaves. The last thing I want to talk to you about before I tell you my exciting announcement is scrying. Have you ever heard of scrying? Scrying. So there's a couple of different kinds of scrying. There is moon scrying, where you literally take a bowl of water, just water, and you go out in front of the moon, outside, and you sit with it in front of the moon and you meditate. And you look into the water in a meditative state, and you look for symbols. The same way that you can scry with a crystal ball, this is my witch ball, right? You could scry with a crystal ball, and you sit and meditate and look into the ball for symbols. Now there's a couple of ways that this happens. Different seers, different intuitives do this in different ways. Okay, so there are mostly two different ways. Way number one that this sometimes happens, right, is that by going into the meditative state, that it helps them channel messages, right? So that's way number one. Way number two is that they literally, the same way that you see stuff in your teacup, they literally see shadows or symbols, etc., appear in the water and in their crystal ball, right? And so that's scrying. So there's two different ways, right, that this might work, depending on what your gifts are, depending on what your clairsenses are, depending on how you receive signs, omens, symbols, etc. Yes, so those of you that are saying that you like my ball, this is my witch ball. I'm using it as an example, so I don't actually use this ball for scrying. This is a witch ball. Side note here, squirrel. This is used similarly to the way that we use a dream catcher, only you hang it in your space, and all of those little threads that you see inside of it are used to collect and trap negative energy. And so this helps keep your space or your room or your house safe and protective from negative energy. The idea is that the energy can move through the glass, negative energy gets trapped inside. Good energy or positive energy moves freely throughout. And so the only thing that I would tell you is that you don't ever want to drop one of these, because you don't ever want to release that, right? So that is my witch's ball. So divination, there are so many kinds of divination. Like, I have only scratched the surface this evening, but this would be an incredibly long live if I were to tell you all of the kinds of divination. But these are some of the more common kinds of divination that witches use. It's a tool for witches. It's a tool for people in general. You don't have to be a witch in order to use divination. And not all witches use divination, just like not all witches use crystals, just like not all witches use herbs, right? So it's a tool that some witches use. It's a tool that I use. It's a tool that I enjoy using, which is why I wanted to share it with all of you. So, my exciting announcement. Are you excited? Solstice is Friday. That's only a couple of days away. I love solstice. Do you love solstice? I love solstice so much. So, I did a live on solstice last week, and it was so exciting. I loved being able to share about solstice. I loved being able to share with you little tips and tricks, like the fact that you can make solstice water if you know how to make moon water. It's very similar. If you didn't check that out, make sure you catch that live so that you know how to celebrate solstice, and so that you can get ready and you can make your own solstice water. But what I want to tell you about is the fact that this week I've been offering some special little solstice surprises. One of them that I want to offer to you, so I already announced on Monday that I was offering a divination surprise or gift, which was that I'm offering a oracle card special to anyone who wants to take advantage of it. which is a 7-card reading for $57.77 for solstice. I'm running it through Sunday. What I want to tell you tonight is that in addition to oracle cards, I'm going to offer rune readings, which I do not always offer rune readings. It's something that's very sacred to me, very special to me. So I'm offering rune readings, either 5 or 7 runes. 5 rune reading is $57.77. A 7 rune reading is $77.77. Lots of sevens. So rune readings, if you want to take advantage of that, it's something that is a little special, a little harder to find. So let me know. I'd be happy to hook you up. I know that some of you have already gotten with me because it got whispered out, and some people know. So I still have some spots available for both. There are more surprises coming, so keep your ears open and your eyes peeled to the profile. I hope that all of you learned something fabulous about divination tonight. I hope that all of you learned that all of you can try divination. You don't have to be a witch to do it. And I hope that all of you remember that solstice is on Friday and that you can celebrate solstice. You don't have to be a witch to celebrate solstice. Anybody can celebrate the sun. Anybody can celebrate it, right? It's fabulous. So I hope that you find a way to celebrate. If you need a creative way to celebrate and you don't know how, reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you troubleshoot that also. With that, I'm going to pop off of here. Happy Witchy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday in general. And I'm going to talk to you all soon. Hugs and kisses, everyone.